I think there's a whole new awareness right now after these
Right.
fires in LA, at least for
Hmm.
people here in California, of like just actually how toxic our whole houses are. So,
Yeah.
the answer for some might be like, oh, I was gonna buy a new couch and I'm gonna buy a couch that's cotton instead of like plastic. And just like
Hmm.
those smaller things.
Yeah.
And yeah, the more people that could be building a whole house out of natural materials right now, that's amazing.
Hi, this is Izumi Tanaka with Home Green Homes Podcast. Today I have Sasha Rabin. She is the founder of Earthen Shelter, as well as Natural Building Advocacy Director for Quail Springs. And Sasha's have such an interesting background, and what she's doing is fascinating. And I invited her to be my guest today. So, Sasha, let's start out with your background. How did you end up being in this space? Like, was there some kind of a magic in your childhood, or I'm just very curious to know what got you to this place?
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like a lot of people I interact with came from like some really different upbringing, and then,
Mhm.
and I'm kind of one of those people that like the fruit didn't fall from far from the tree. My mom was a landscaper and my dad was a carpenter and contractor. So, and it was really my dad that first introduced me to like straw bale. It was in the 90s, and he got interested in it and sort of showed me, Bill and Athena's book back then.
Mhm.
And he took me down to when I was like the summer before high school, he took me down into Mexico and Guatemala and showed me some of the different ruins. And we kind of went on a tour of some of the ruins. Not like an official tour. He took me on a tour. Um, and yeah, I think that that was my first sort of like introduction to like, oh, wow, there's just a different way of doing things.
Mhm.
And that kind of sparked the interest. I remember one thing that stood out to me on that trip, looking at some of these like ancient Mayan pyramids, was just this idea that you might be involved in building something and in your entire lifetime not see it to completion. Like in your entire
Mm.
lifetime, just be part of the
Mhm.
building of one small part, but that sort of bigger picture perspective on our built environment um, made a big impression on me. And then I studied various different things. Like in college, I studied sort of smorgasbord of environmental studies stuff, and I got
Mm.
interested in alternative energy. And then, and that was in like late 90s when it was solar was kind of getting to be more popular. And then I kind of was like, wait a minute, we don't just need to, change our source of where we're taking our energy from. We need to
Mhm.
actually redesign our lives and our buildings so that we don't need as much electricity. So that got me interested in like passive solar design and architecture and more of like design. But I knew I didn't want to be just like sitting at a desk designing.
Mm.
I kind of now wish I had have had a little, maybe I could have just taken a few classes or something, but a little more background in that. But yeah, I knew I didn't want to just be stuck in an office in that way. Um, so I dabbled with going to getting a master's in landscape architecture and
Mm.
actually like moved to get residency somewhere. But then I was like, no, I just want to go do building. And when I found specifically Cobb,
Mhm.
Earthen Building, it was the right mix of it felt good because it was something that felt like environmentally, beneficial, but also there was the certain element of like creativity and artistic element, and then also working with people and like teaching and like inspiring other people and that side of it. So it's kind of the right like combination mesh of excuse me, of like some of my different interests that
Mhm.
kind of just yeah, melded in this
Mhm.
realm of earth and building.
And that's what led you to Cobb Research Institute.
Yeah, I've only been on the board for Cobb Research Institute for the last couple of years.
Oh, I see.
Or maybe at this point, maybe a little more than that. But and so I kind of got started in Cobb building with an internship up at Cobb Cottage Company with a man named Yanto Evans in 2002.
Okay.
So it's been a
So
little.
For those of us who may not be so familiar with the cob buildings, can you explain what that is?
Yeah, so specifically, so there's a lot of different kinds of earthen building, and
Sure.
even to this day, earthen building is the most common building material on the planet. There's more
Hmm.
people building and living in, or maybe not more people building now, but there's more people living in houses made of some
Yeah.
kind of earthen material than any other material on the
Right.
planet. Um, and cob is sort of one, point on that spectrum. And it really is a spectrum, an infinite
Mm.
different amount of ways of working with these materials,
Right.
that where there's different parts that make sense culturally and environmentally and climactically in all these different places. And cob is
Yeah.
one method. The word cob comes from England, like Devon area. It's an old
Hmm.
word and it means lump or mass. So it's a way of working with earthen building materials where you use the material in its wet, malleable form, essentially to build one monolithic structure.
Mm.
It's the material itself is very similar to Adobe, which more people, at least around this part of the world, are familiar with.
Right.
But you build it rather than drying bricks in the sun first, you build it with your still wet material.
Hmm. Hmm. Right. My impression of cob building is something that you might find in areas that might have more moisture or humidity. That's the kind of impression I get, you know? You okay?
Um, you mean more moisture than, say, where you might find Adobe buildings?
Right. So Adobe buildings you would typically see a more like desert area, but the type of cob buildings that I see pictures of maybe some like you said England or
Yeah.
like East Coast where it might be more humidity. Is that
Yeah,
just
I
kind
mean,
of
and
a
that's
visual impression?
That's probably in a large part due to the fact that when you're building with Adobe, you make
Hmm.
Adobes and then you dry them outside in the sun.
Right,
And if you're in a climate where it rains all year round, off and on,
right.
it's very hard to have a
Hmm.
field of Adobes out there drying.
Right.
Not that you can't do some like indoors or in a shop or in a barn, but it's really quite a lot that you need.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, there's sort of there's a lot of different sort of pros and cons for all the different building systems,
Hmm.
and the um and yeah, that would be one of the, downsides of Adobe is like, okay, you need places to dry your Adobe. So
Right.
probably not going to do so much Adobe in, the Northwest or something
Yeah,
where
exactly. Right, right, right,
it's
right,
really
right.
rainy.
Yeah. So, what inspired you to found this Earthen Shelter, which you are the founder and chief, basically operating person, right?
Yeah, it's kind of me and my husband. But we have
Hmm.
a toddler now, so it's kind
Yeah.
of us at a time.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I've had a number of different organizations over the years, and this is
Hmm.
just sort of recent iteration, and it's really an organization, a website of information and stuff with which to teach workshops through.
Hmm.
So that's a
Hmm.
big part of what I do is teach
Hmm.
classes and workshops, and we kind of do like a few, plaster jobs throughout the year or something like that.
Hmm.
For the
Hmm.
most part, we teaching workshops is really sort of where my more passions lie. So yeah, that's Earth and Shelter is primarily sort of venue for teaching workshops.
I see. And do you teach different types of earthen buildings, or
Yeah,
do
I
you
would say
have specific type of earthen building?
I can sort of, I mean, primarily cob, and
Hmm.
then um we do a class that we've done it, a 3-day class or a 4-day class that's sort of a introduction to earthen building where we'll do a number of different
Hmm.
types of types of wall building methods.
Hmm.
Really, really the focus, and I would say the focus for all the workshops is really on the materials. And
Hmm.
the ideal scenario is that
Hmm.
you can do the workshop with a deep enough understanding of the materials that you can go back to your own site and actually do whatever it is that works best on your site.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
which is going to be slightly different than here. And
Hmm.
a lot of
Right.
computer workshops.
Hmm.
We have two coming up. And then we also do a lot of cob oven workshops. And
Hmm.
mostly it's because people really like them, but also because cob ovens are just sort of the really ideal sort of gateway starter project.
Interesting. And can you put that indoor?
You can, but I don't
Oh, I
usually
see.
recommend
So
that.
it's
I would,
usually outside.
yeah, with a little roof over it.
Hmm. 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 I'm just curious. So, for instance, like I live in a fairly arid mountain area. The, earth is really hard to dig,
Uh,
and and so are you saying that in any place that you may find yourself, you are able to you should be able to build something with the materials that's available locally?
Not necessarily. I mean, often
Okay.
you will have to import one material or
I
another.
see. Mm-hmm.
Um, Generally, you can basically find what you need within
Mm-hmm.
a radius. Um,
Right.
I definitely know that you would be able to. Uh,
Okay.
and but that is also part of what dictates vernacular tradition
I
of
see.
building in a particular location and climate, or
Mm-hmm.
in a particular
Mm-hmm.
location,
Mm-hmm.
is what is available. And
Right.
it doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense to
Mm-hmm.
just import all your materials. And I think that's one of the downsides of people getting really, really attached to like, I want to build,
Uh-huh.
whatever.
Right.
And
Right.
importing a bunch of materials kind of takes away the point.
Yeah, yeah. So I understand that you were really working with the when you were involved with Cobb Research Institute, you were working on the codes, like building codes. So I
Somewhat.
would imagine that, building with any kind of, you know, natural material might have some challenges in getting through the permitting process. So
Yeah.
can you discuss that a little bit? Like
Yeah.
where are we in that,
Yeah. Just for clarity,
progression?
so the Cobb Research Institute
Hmm.
sponsored the writing of a
I
Cobb
see.
code that
I
did get
see.
passed by the
I see.
International Code Council. I joined the Cobb Research Institute kind of as the code had already been written
Hmm.
mostly.
I
So I
see.
wasn't like a huge part in that, but I've been involved in trying to get states to adopt the code, which
Mm-hmm.
proves to be even more difficult
Yeah.
than getting the International Code Council to adopt it.
Right.
So we now have technically they're appendices, but the in the residential code there is an appendix for cob, straw bale, light straw clay, hemp lime, and light straw clay. I might have already said that one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's super exciting. That's awesome. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the cob one, if someone is looking into it, it's called monolithic adobe in
Mm-hmm.
the
I see.
So it is there, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But the COB code, for example, has not yet been adopted in any states or jurisdictions.
I see.
So it's like that's great that it's there. And if anyone wanted to permit a cob house right now,
Mm-hmm.
the hardest areas are going to be in any high seismic zones. And you do, even
Mm-hmm.
with following the appendix, you will still need to hire a engineer and have your structure engineered in the highest seismic zones.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to try to permit a building, you would probably use what's called an AMMR. It's an alternative material means and but yeah, then
Yeah.
that's the most common way
Mm-hmm.
a to get a alternative building material, a
Mm-hmm.
permit for an alternative
I
building material.
see. Let me back up just a little bit. So, what is the exact, well, I don't know how I say exact, but what is the definition of earthen buildings? Oh, earthen buildings. Like, is there any kind of formula that would qualify as a earthen buildings? Like, is Adobe is considered earthen, or is there any like combination of that has to involve some engineering? And please forgive me,
Yeah.
I'm not an architect and I
Yeah.
am not a building scientist, so I am, just consider me as a layperson who doesn't have any building knowledge.
Yeah, I did just look it up. It's an alternative means and methods request.
I
So,
see. Okay.
um, yeah. So it maybe you're asking for just a little bit of an overall breakdown of
Right.
like what is even, yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say like I sort of said at the beginning, these systems truly are a spectrum.
Right.
And so, for example, light straw clay is a method of building where you take straw and you make a clay slip, just like a clay slip from a pot from your pottery class from like
Hmm.
elementary school or something, where the clay becomes, this kind of smoothie-like consistency, and you coat the straw on it, and it's like coating a salad. So the
Mm.
straw is really fluffy, and light straw clay is an insulative material for inside a frame. Usually a
Hmm.
wooden frame, could be a metal
Hmm.
frame. So
Hmm.
your material goes in and it's kind of lightly packed into the frame. So it's a combination of mostly straw with a little bit of clay. Like, is
Hmm.
that called an earthen building method? My guess is that yes by some people and no by others. So
Mm.
um, yeah, it's not like so cut and dry in terms of,
Right.
but like Cobb is, that is
Right.
an building method.
Hmm.
Adobe is,
Hmm.
and maybe another method that is like really falls solidly into the earthen building camp would be Super
Hmm.
Adobe or Earth Bag, and it's a system that was really popularized and created by this man, Nader Khalili, who's no longer with us, but founded an organization in Southern California called Cal Earth in Hesperia, California. And they do lots
Yeah.
of open houses. And so that's a fun place to be able to go, like really get hands-on, visual touch feel building.
Yes. Yes, I have heard of Kala Earth. Um, so I know that you were involved with or engaged in some conversation after the fires we experienced in Southern California. I is the earthen buildings considered fire resistant, or is there any applications that people who are, currently trying to rebuild in those area can consider or take into consideration with this method of building?
Yeah. So there are a lot of conversations super alive right now about
Yes.
how how to rebuild some of those
Mm-hmm.
areas in a better way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there are a lot of ways to build back a bit better. Are we, clearly we're not going to be rebuilding all of LA out of Cobb or Adobe, unfortunately. But but I would guess that a few people will. And there's a few
Yeah.
people really trying to push that forward. Um, so yes, these materials are considered fire resistant.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is considered like non-combustible. Sometimes I
Right.
see
Yeah.
that word getting thrown around, and that's
Yeah.
not, But several years ago, I worked with my husband John and I went to Texas and we built two cob walls in a fire testing facility, and we did achieve what's called a ASTM, a 2 hour fire rating, an ASTM
Mm-hmm.
119
Yeah.
test. It's nothing that is like technically needed for most of what people are using cob building for, but it is a great talking point to say
Mm-hmm.
cob wall withstood 2,000-degree temperatures on one side for two
Wow.
hours. And then the part that we were a little more nervous about is then the wall gets rotated around and blasted with a fire hose for 2 minutes.
Oh,
And
wow.
so, which, it kind of goes to show like these tests are, they're not really, they don't really make sense in the real world example because you would never have a fire hose on an earthen wall for 2 minutes on a 10 by 10 section. There's nothing there to be burning. There's just no,
Yeah, right,
maybe
right,
the
right.
roof,
Uh-huh.
but then the roof would be getting hosed off. Like there's
Right.
no scenario
Right.
where, yeah, a solid earthen wall would have a fire hose on it for 2 minutes. But anyway, that's the
Yeah.
test. And it passed. So,
Uh-huh.
yeah, so we do have an official fire rating for Cobb, and it
Mm-hmm.
would be very similar for Adobe. And Straw Bale also has an official fire rating too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's
so
good
all
to
of these
know.
materials are very, very fire resistant, and it's all in the details, right? Like
Right.
you can also have a Cobb house go through a fire and
Mm.
completely unusable at the end of that
Mm-hmm.
fire. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
no yeah, the house can still be ruined.
Mm.
Just like you can do really good detailing on a wooden house and have
Right.
really good success in fires too.
Right, right. But you also mentioned earlier that you have to be careful when you're building on a seismic
Yeah.
activity area,
Uh-huh.
seismically active area.
Yeah.
So how do you counteract that? Is there any method that you already figured out?
So there's methods that the engineers have figured out.
Okay.
We also several years ago, along with a handful of other people at Quail Springs, we did
hmm
seismic testing on cob
hmm
walls. And
hmm
I would say for the most part, just need to do more testing. Like
Yeah.
we need there's a bunch of universities that are interested in doing more seismic and all the things, all the testing.
hmm
But that's really where we're at right now is like
Mm,
really needing more really funding for testing. But we
mm,
have done some to seismic testing. We partnered with Cal Poly, two graduate students there, and then they've
uh,
also done some testing at Santa Clara University.
mm,
And so we have some information, and there are some engineers working with that. So in the LA area, there's
hmm
three different seismic design categories.
Right.
Um, Either one or two of them, I think two of them, and it might be C and D, but I'm not completely positive. You would need to get an engineer, and then
hmm
that design category E, we don't actually have the data for an engineer to engineer a building there.
I
So
see.
some places it might be possible, and some places it's probably
I
not.
see. So it really depends on where the lot sits.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so tell me about the Quail Springs.
Yeah.
I happen to be not too far from it, but if you can tell us about what it is and tell us about the home you built.
Oh, yeah. So it is a nonprofit educational center that sits on about 300 acres, nestled up in the Los Padres National Forest in the Cuyama Valley, traditional Chumash land.
Mhm.
And it's also a community. And so about 20 years ago, there were some folks in Santa Barbara that were looking for a place to bring youth, bring youth out of the city and have them really immersed in as close to a truly wild place as possible. And
Mm.
they came upon this land and they were able to get neighbors gave them a no interest loan to buy it. And then
Oh,
we
wow.
finally paid off that loan maybe 7, 8 years ago or something like
Mhm.
that. And it has had a real focus in permaculture education over the years. Right now, the the focus has become way more localized to the Cuyama Valley,
Mm.
really working on water issues.
Yes.
Um, which it's Cuyama Valley is one of the, deemed one of the at-risk water basins in
Mm-hmm.
the country. And so a lot of their work has become more localized. For a while, we were running big international PDC permaculture design courses focused on international
Oh,
development.
wow.
There's people coming from all over the world. And so now it's actually, I think the vision was always that we kind
Mm.
of in more locally. And then the natural building work has just kind of always been part of it because we all need shelter. So
Mm. Mm-hmm.
we tried a long time ago to get a permit for a light straw clay, a timber framed light straw clay building. And we were not, they said no. The county said no.
Oh, wow.
So we kind of decided to just start building and ask for forgiveness later. So we have a number of different earthen buildings and straw bale. and we are in a process of trying to get them retroactively permitted. And
Oh, wow.
it's been, I don't even know how many years now, 6, 7 years, and it's a very,
Wow.
very slow process with the county.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Is this
But it's
Santa
kind
Barbara
of,
County? Oh,
it's
Ventura
actually
County.
Ventura County.
Ventura
We're in
County.
Ventura County. We're at the very, very, like the end of our driveway is Santa Barbara County. So we're at the
Oh, interesting.
tip of Ventura County.
Uh-huh.
Um, and for those of you who are listening who aren't that familiar with the area, Ventura County like also spans down into, parts. It butts up on LA County. So there's
Yeah.
most of
Yeah.
Ventura County is very, very urban. And then
Mm-hmm.
there's this one little corner of it that's like really, really rural.
Yeah.
Um, so, I think the county kind of doesn't really know what to do with us, but
Yeah.
um we are, yeah, we're really trying to engage with the county and trying to like have it be a demonstration for like
Yeah.
we work with these materials. And one of the sort of flaws in the system that we have is that we don't actually have anywhere other than like little bits at university settings to actually um, do like R&D on innovative building systems.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we've been doing, and we've learned a lot. And
Mm-hmm.
that we did official fire testing and official and seismic testing with Cal Poly, and so kind of taking a lot of that and trying to bring it to the forefront and make it more official. And
Mm-hmm.
um, but there's really nowhere to like glean the information that you need in order to do the tests without
Right.
practicing and
Yeah.
building some buildings. So yeah, it's been really like kind of a playground,
Mm-hmm.
research site.
Mm-hmm. And you built a home there at Quail Springs for yourself, right?
I did, yeah. I built a home and I lived there for about 10 years. About
Uh-huh.
midway through that, I met my husband and he lived there for the last, half of that time with me. And the house I built was a combination of like all the different methods of building I've
Oh,
mentioned.
wow.
I was just wanting to have fun and experiment. So it was part of it was framed and infilled with light struck clay. Part of it was earth bag. There was some cob, some all sorts of things.
Interesting. And but you had the power and did you have running water? What are the
So,
infrastructures you had there?
so all the different buildings, and some of them don't have any power, but most of them have just very small scale solar systems
I
at each
see.
house.
Uh-huh.
And then most of them are all hooked up to the spring water.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have a well that's our potable water. So most of the houses don't have they don't have potable water, but we do
Mm-hmm.
have a way of redoing all the plumbing so that we could hook them up to potable water. And
I
that's part
see.
we have to do for the permitting.
I
Um,
see.
but yeah, they're Quail Springs, hence the name. We have a
Mm-hmm.
huge, beautiful spring, and it feeds all the water for the houses and the
Oh, that's
community and the
wonderful.
farm and the
Mm-hmm.
animal. And
Mm-hmm.
then, like I said, there's a well as well. So
Mm-hmm.
the
And you
residents.
said that it's a community, so you do
Yeah.
have people living there.
Yeah. There's probably about 15 people living there, and that's
Uh-huh.
to 20 over the
Uh-huh.
years.
Mm-hmm.
Most people living there do work for the nonprofit, but not
I
everyone.
see. I see. I see. So how popular or I mean, how would I say this? Are there any areas in the US, for instance, that you may find more what you would consider earthen buildings than some other areas, or how prevalent are there?
Yeah. So, I mean, probably needless to say, the most common areas like New Mexico, Arizona,
Right. Mm-hmm.
with Adobe buildings.
Right.
I think one thing that's interesting though is if you kind of start to like put that lens on and look around,
Mm-hmm.
like even here in California, there's Adobe buildings all over, right?
Yeah.
Like downtown
True.
Santa Barbara is
Yeah.
like, oh, the courthouse is Adobe. Oh,
Yeah.
the all these buildings. And you find the same thing all the way up, through California.
Mm-hmm.
And even on the East Coast, there are, some old cob buildings from when people immigrated from England back in the day, and that's how they
Mm.
built. But I would say more, Southwest California, and then but like there's a lot happening in North Carolina right now.
Mm,
And yeah, there's like things are popping up all over.
I
And a
see.
lot of that at this point too is related to places where that less have more easeful uh
Mm-hmm.
building permit processes.
Mm-hmm. I see. I see. What is your vision? Like, what do you see in the future for us? Like, as you know, many of us are, I'm sure, pondering right now on how we're gonna build homes that are resilient and, you know, comfortable and, healthy. It's not we're not inhaling all these VOCs and toxic fumes and things like that.
Yeah.
What do you envision for our future?
I mean, I kind of think the solutions lie in like all of it. Like we need all of it. Like there's I think that one of the things that I'm a little like befuddled by with some of the conversations around rebuilding in LA
Mm-hmm.
is people getting so locked on to like, oh, compressed earth block is the answer or hempcrete, that is the answer. And it's like, well, that's one of the answers. And we actually need all of the solutions right now
Mm-hmm.
in order to have any hope in making the tiniest dent. Like we don't even have very many people who are trained or contractors who can build with these different methods. So like
Mm-hmm.
all of it. And I kind of think the same thing just in relation to your question. We need people who are just wanting to like repaint their houses with a less toxic paint. Like for some
Mm-hmm.
people, that's as far as it's going to go. I think
Yeah.
there's so much interesting I think there's a whole new awareness right now after these
Right.
fires in LA, at least for
Mm-hmm.
people here in California, of like just actually how toxic our whole houses are. So,
Yeah.
the answer for some might be like, oh, I was going to buy a new couch and I'm going to buy a couch that's cotton instead of like plastic, and, just
Mm-hmm.
like those smaller things.
Yeah.
And yeah, the more people that could be building a whole house out of natural materials right now, that's amazing. And I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
other thing that happened in LA is that, the houses themselves were the fuel for this fire, right? It
Right.
wasn't even so much the trees per se, it was the
Mm-hmm.
houses. So
Mm-hmm.
we can build our houses with less flammable material. We're making
Mm-hmm.
our whole neighborhood safer.
Yeah.
Um, I think there's some other fun ways of utilizing these materials, in terms of like slightly lower hanging fruit than building whole houses.
Yeah.
One thing that a lot of people are talking about that helps keep fires from spreading is like non-flammable walls around
Mm-hmm.
property. It can even
Mm-hmm.
be kind of short. So that could be
Yeah.
totally done with copper adobe, right? Like no
Mm-hmm.
problem. There's no permit that's needed. I believe in LA County, you can build something up to it's either 5 or 6 feet. That's a masonry
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
wall. So that's something fun. We're also really exploring and working on some like stock plans for a cob like shed, essentially, just like some
Mm. Uh-huh.
permitted 120
Uh-huh.
square foot shed, but utilizing sort of the data that we know to
Mm-hmm.
be helpful with seismic activity and all the things,
Mm-hmm.
for these fire prone areas so that they could also serve as a storage for people's
Right.
valuables. So
Right.
traditional Japanese tradition of
Yes, I was just gonna
chakras.
say, uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
You maybe can speak more to that, but yeah, that's sort of like the project that we're working on is a little bit like based on that. And
Sure.
so it's a for folks who aren't familiar, it's like in places where the main housing is traditionally wood, there's these little, I mean, I think sometimes kuras can be wooden too, but like
Mm-hmm.
earthen storehouses
Right.
that you can store your valuables in there.
Right.
And I also feel like in worst case scenario, you could also go in there. So little
Yeah.
fire shelters throughout the
Right.
city
Right.
or,
Right. Yeah.
areas.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. There's so much. This is really deep, right? You can get deeper and deeper. So what are the people? the people who come to your workshops, who are they and how are you reaching them? How are you, I guess, promoting your
Yeah.
workshops and how are you getting them to come to you? Like, what's interesting them?
Yeah. Well, different. I mean, it's kind of all across the board, honestly.
Mm,
There's a lot of people that are like, oh, I've always wanted to learn something about this.
mm,
A lot of people probably don't end up doing anything with it, but we are
yeah,
teaching one workshop down in Topanga in a few weeks, and it's an interior earth and plaster workshop, so it's
I see.
completely geared for plaster over drywall.
I
So
see.
I'm
Over
like
drywall.
designing this
Okay.
workshop for I want it to be like I want people to go home and be able to just like put earth and plaster on their walls. And
Yeah.
um it's like, yeah, that's not gonna make a huge dent in any kind of environmental crisis that we're in,
Mm-hmm.
but it
Mm-hmm.
does potentially make the air quality in someone's house a little bit better. It also
Mm.
just helps with that, like reconnecting us to our built environment. So the
Yeah.
little things that we can learn to do in our own homes and to just like make our homes feel that much better.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I am interested, really interested in the retrofit arena, which, I'd
Mm-hmm.
say that the earth and plaster over drywall is a little bit of that. Obviously, it's pretty like light, like
Mm-hmm.
retrofit
Mm-hmm.
light. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we don't actually have a housing shortage, right? We have enough houses. But yeah, so I'm very interested in that as well.
I see. I see.
But
So
yeah,
how,
the
mm-hmm.
workshops are like sometimes there's contractors who are coming who want to get more involved in these things.
Okay.
Sometimes, yeah, it's just like families that want to build
Oh,
some
wow.
space or yeah, kind of the whole.
And they get, yeah,
Yeah,
their hands-on experience while
yeah,
they're at your workshop,
yeah.
right? That's
Yeah.
amazing.
And mostly just through my website, our
Yeah.
newsletter, and I mean, honestly, mostly just through social media these days.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so speaking of that, let's hear how people can find you.
Yeah, my website is earthenshelter.com and my Instagram is earthenshelter. Same on Facebook. So,
Okay. Okay. Sounds
yeah.
good. And I will definitely put your link to the show note. Should I put a link to Quail Springs as well?
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And and you are not too involved with Quail Springs right now, or
I mean, I am still I am still involved. I don't live there, but I still
I
run the
see.
natural building department.
I
So,
see. I see.
yeah.
Okay. I'm just curious, is your father still kind of doing the similar work, or
He's not. He passed
uh
away a couple years
oh,
ago,
I'm sorry.
but we did get to do a few projects together, so
Oh, that's
it was
nice.
fun.
Oh, and you're kind of carrying his legacy.
Uh-huh.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much, Sasha. I'm so grateful to have this conversation, and I look forward to telling everybody about your work.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This was Izumi Tanaka with Home Green Homes Podcast.